Okay, hi everybody, and good morning. Here from the Temple of Silence. I sometimes do the programs in here. It's a beautiful little temple where we conduct our services and from which we broadcast with a number of devas in attendance, I hope. Now we've reached the point where we've talked about prana, or begun to talk about prana in its fivefold nature, in its five manifestations, thus corresponding to the five states of mind, and we kind of numbered those and looked at a little bit of how they work, at least given names for them. So we're on the eighth program in a treatise on white magic video commentaries, and well, I'm trying to finish this before going to the United States in a few days, so let's see if it works. So going on then, prana in this solar system works out as the five great states of energy, which we call planes, the medium of consciousness. Okay, well, I think that's interesting because it relates then to, we might say, Brahma, particularly, because the number of Brahma is 5. Now, really, we have 7 great states of energy we call planes, and from another perspective, the prana is working out on the 4 higher of the planes, just the way it does in the etheric body of man, work out on the subplanes. Now, I guess one wonders whether, if we look at the higher mental plane, which is the home of the causal body, egoic lotus, whether that is an area as well where prana is directed. So the use of the number 5 is interesting, but I think it has to do with the distinction between the etheric aspect of the cosmic physical plane and the dense physical body of the planetary logos or solar logos on the cosmic physical plane, with the higher mental plane remaining in a somewhat ambiguous condition, at least ambiguous for me at the moment, because the lower 18 subplanes certainly relate to the planetary logos, and the lower 21 to the solar logos, and we wonder if that puts the higher 3 planes, 18 plus 3 is 21, in a particular category with respect to the planetary logos. In any case, the 5 differentiations of prana in the human body are prana, okay, extending from the nose to the heart and having special relation to the mouth, speech, the heart, and lungs. Apparently other centers are included there, not only other centers included, and these would be in the head and in relation to the face and the lungs. Okay, now we seem to be, I wonder if we're starting from the, no, I see. We're starting from a somewhat intermediate position. Anyway, from the nose to the heart, including the speech. Now, I suppose these types of pranas can be nourished by special techniques, and I would suppose certain breathing exercises can augment their effectiveness, the effectiveness of these pranas, or balance them. Samana extends from the heart to the solar plexus It concerns food and the nourishing of the body through the medium of food and drink, and has a special relation to the stomach. It also somehow it's suggesting, the solar plexus center, okay, involving solar plexus. Apana controls the solar plexus to the soles of the feet. It's a very sweeping type of prana, a large area here. It concerns the organs of elimination, of rejection, and of birth. Interesting how birth is in a way a casting out into into the light of day, as that has sometimes been referred to. Sometimes the light of day is referred to in relation to Scorpio and the Buddhic plane. It has a lower meaning and a higher meaning. Samana extends from the heart to the, Apana, from the solar plexus to the soles of the feet, wherein you will also find chakras, and in the knees. A number of the minor chakras are taken in by these different pranas, not only the major ones. It concerns, the organs of elimination, rejection, and of birth, and having special relation to the organs of generation and elimination. I think, in a way, the pranas are moving downward from the place where we started with the normal name, prana. But here is something else, and now we're going back to the nose. I don't know why they're put in this order. Upana, I'm not sure where the accent goes, is found between the nose and the top of the head. It has special relation to the brain, the nose, and the eyes, and when properly controlled, produces the coordination of the vital airs and their correct handling. I suppose the Asna Center is involved as the directing center. And then finally, some synthetic Vayana, number 5, is the term applied to the sum total of pranic energy, and it is distributed evenly throughout the entire body. So I think, there are etheric atomic structures to these pranas, especially when we're talking about even distribution. And they can be, apparently this one can be superimposed upon all the others. Its instruments are the thousands of nadis or nerves found in the body, and it has a peculiar, definite connection with the blood channels, the veins, and the arteries. So all means of connection and transmission and general circulation of nerve currents, and the bloodstream. Well, I don't think there's too much we can say about this. This simply is a factual presentation of the way the Raja Yoga, or the Ageless Wisdom, sees these types of pranas. They are not elaborated upon in terms of their more minute structure, but their areas of effectiveness are given. And I suppose when there is trouble in any area of the body or an imbalance, the means of working with one or other of these pranas can be utilized. Right. Okay, and probably we could look at them in terms of the rays as well. This one that goes from the heart to the solar plexus seems like the even even line, although maybe the third ray is involved in it somewhat. But certainly the 2 and the 4 are there. And when we go further, at least we know what chakras are involved. It's a different system altogether. Vayana is synthetic, and the third ray seems to be involved in prana per se, and in a way, the third of the pranic triangle, the third center of the pranic triangle is the spleen. It has a first, second, and third aspect. The first aspect of the pranic triangle being found in the lungs center, and then the second aspect above the solar plexus in a center dedicated to that, and then the spleen brings in the third aspect. So if we're dealing here with the throat and with speech, I think the third aspect is involved when we're looking at prana per se. The mouth and speech and the lungs have a third ray connection as well, but the heart more a first and second ray connection, pulsation, radiation, and so forth. So in order to get some kind of correlation here between the information we usually use and this presentation, I think it will take a little bit of work, but at least we can see which major and minor centers seem to be involved all the way from the top of the head to the soles of the feet. This is by no means an exhaustive presentation, and I think the etheric body has been detailed in its structure and function certainly in Chinese medicine, I think, with their own system, which may not correlate precisely with the Trans-Himalayan system that we are given, but enough so that we know these people have worked very arduously at mapping the etheric body and its methods of circulation. When you think about the two principles involved there, sometimes the etheric body is considered a principle, okay, but the pranas circulating through the etheric body are also considered part of a principle, going under the name prana in general. So I think our main task is to stay vitalized, and we generally use the spleen to do that, and the color orange is helpful. And we've been given an exercise where we stand by the window and open it, and we breathe in the vitality. When I say orange, maybe it's more yellow-orange, and that helps with the vitalization for the day. So we'll just leave that, and we may want to memorize those and their locations: prana, samana, apana, upana, and vayana. The etheric body, okay, so this is from, I suppose, discussion from the Light of the Soul, the commentary on the Yoga Sutras. All right. The etheric body is the force or vital body, and it permeates every part of the dense physical. This is really the permeating, vitalizing, energizing, animating, if you will. It relates to the soul, soul, etheric body, physical body, animating aspect, which makes it possible for the physical body to function, to move. And in periods of great devitalization, if you've experienced them, you feel that you hardly want to move at all, or not even, or can't. DK talks about the deathbed experience, and how the consciousness is aware of everything that's going on in the room, but there is no capacity to use the volitional aspect of the nervous system and move the body whatsoever. Probably some functions still remain as long as there is life in the dense physical body provided by the etheric body, but it's for all practical purposes, while the consciousness is alert, the physical body is insufficiently animated or energized to move. So immobility is taking over. It is this etheric body, it is the background, the true substance of the physical body. Now, you know, substance sometimes is equated with matter per se, but that is a more superficial assessment of the word. It is a state of energy or energy matter, subtler matter, substanding another state of matter which is more gross. So we can say that a certain level of energy, a certain level of a plane is substantial to a grosser level. And the grosser level is animated by this subtler, substanding energy. The word substance is very interesting because it can be even equivalent to being and to subtle matter, and as it's popularly used, simply to matter itself. According to the nature of the force animating the etheric body, according to the activity of that force in the etheric body, according to the aliveness or the sluggishness of the most important parts of the etheric body, the centers of the spine, so will be the corresponding activity of the physical body. So basically, she's saying, you know, just what I said, just saying it better. All right. Similarly and symbolically, according to the wholeness of the breathing apparatus, and according to the ability of that apparatus to oxygenate and render pure the blood, so will be the health or wholeness of the dense physical body. And in this, in the distribution of a necessary vital essence, the heart. That's the head center. We don't want that. The heart center is involved. So we find it also stated that the forces which make up the vital body, or the various pranas of which it is constructed, emanate from. And here are sources. Okay, let's just call this pranic sources. From the planetary aura, in this case, it is planetary prana, and so concerns primarily the spleen and the health of the physical body, though we have to say that solar prana is also involved with the health of the physical body. The forces which make up the vital body, or the various pranas of which it is constructed, emanate from. Now, there is an etheric portion of every level, and so the higher four subplanes of these planes can be considered etheric in a certain sense. Etheric astral, you know, and etheric mental, whereon the egoic lotus is found. And then from a certain perspective, although it's not the health giving prana that we're used to speaking of. It is a type of etheric emanation and might be then called a type of prana, and maybe all the way up. The higher four subplanes of any plane are considered to be the etheric planes of that cosmic subplane, and hence, in some larger sense, pranic. Okay, so from the astral world via the astral body, this will be purely kamic or desire force and will affect primarily the centers below the diaphragm, and I would say especially the solar plexus. So, are we talking here the higher types of subplane force on the astral plane can be considered in a way astral pranic and maybe more animating in some way than the forces of the lower three subplanes. From the universal mind or monastic force, this will largely be thought force and will go through the throat center, and that makes sense. But what's interesting here is some aspect of the universal mind does seem to reach the fifth cosmic subplane, which we call the mental plane. Okay, so the throat center is involved. As I say, the soft line energy is there, especially energy number 6 is involved with point B. Now, we've been told that ancient fears lurk in the sacral center, and fear, in a way, is a very astral force. So we do see that the emanation from the astral plane affects not only the solar plexus, but the sacral center, and from the sacral center, our access to these anciently retained fears. Now, what about the base of the spine center? I don't know, perhaps some issue regarding the desire to survive is involved there, and harrowing experiences of survival or non-survival probably can be accessed from that plane, even though from that center, even though there's so much more to it than its relationship to the astral plane and to desire force in general. Now, let's see what else. And then from the ego itself, stimulating primarily the head and the heart centers. But remember, interestingly, the egoic lotus is found on the etheric levels of the mental plane, and its force then is mentally pranic. I think if we're looking for the chakras that constitute the various initiates, we're told that 35 vortices of force make the master, and that we can infer then that 42 vortices of force make the Chohan. Of course, I think we all have these vortices of force. It's just a question of using them consciously and coming into relationship with them in a more conscious manner. And I would say then that 49 vortices of force make the Chohan of the 7th degree. But I think what we'll find, even though they're not given here because they're probably somewhat inaccessible to those who are reading these books, and involve some of these chakras, I suppose, involve heights of awareness and capability that are even beyond the master. I think that the higher four subplanes are where these vortices of force are found. So there's 7 on each, and 7 times 7 is 49, 7 times 6, 42, 7 times 5, 35, 7 times 4, 28, and maybe 28 vortices of force make the arhat, or the initiate of the fourth degree. Okay, well, I may have managed to mess up my chronometer, which seems to be a great pastime when I try to make these programs of a certain duration. Well, it seems to be gaining now. But I think it's gaining too fast. All right, we're going to start again on the chronometer. And this means that we certainly will have programs of irregular length. Sorry to say that that is the case. Well, maybe the important thing is that somehow, if this commentary is at all useful, you get a hold of it. And since it's not going on primetime TV, we won't worry too much about the duration. Okay. Now, so from the ego itself comes we can call it a type of prana. And I had asked, whether pranas only will circulate cosmically in the cosmic ethers, but it seems we're talking about all kinds of pranas that that as well are found in the lower aspects within the dense physical nature of the, let's say, the planetary logos. We have read also that most people receive force only from the physical and astral planes, but disciples receive force from the mental and egoic levels. So this will lead to mental polarization, and also finally to soul infusion, which is but the beginning of triadal infusion, and monadic infusion. We're going on then. It may help the student if he realizes that the right control of prana involves the recognition that energy is the sum total of existence and of manifestation, and that the 3 lower bodies are energy bodies, each forming a vehicle for the higher type of energy and being themselves transmitters of energy. At least that's the way it's intended to be. Eventually, we have these vehicles made up largely of what in occultism is called atomic substance. We have all these different planes, and eventually the physical body of man will be made entirely of the substance of the first subplane. But that's not yet, and I think we would have to have a situation where the 4th initiation had been passed. The energies of the lower man are energies of the 3rd aspect, the Holy Ghost or Brahma aspect. Fair enough. The energy of the spiritual man is that of the 2nd aspect, the Christ force or Buddhi. Although we say, that type of force grows within the causal body, and when you look at the causal body, maybe it's sharing very much in this third aspect, energy, but can be infused and made to blossom under the influence of the Christ force, because the causal body becomes more and more Buddhic as we proceed with evolutionary process. The object of evolution in the human family is to bring this Christ force, this principle of Buddhi, into full manifestation upon the physical plane and through the utilization of the triple lower sheath. So rarely, I believe this is written by Alice Bailey in the book The Light of the Soul, and you don't find such a clear definition of the objective of the human race. This is certainly one of the major objectives. Love expressing through intelligence, love upon the material plane, love wisdom in full expression through the vehicles of the personality and through the vehicles of the, what do we say is the personality of the planetary logos? In a way, it has to involve some cosmic planes, but within the dense physical body of the planetary logos, let's start there, this love, wisdom, energy has to express. And that's part of the redemption of matter from the previous solar system. The object of evolution in the human family is to bring the Christ force, the principle of Buddhi, it's love, wisdom on the fourth plane, the plane of intuition, the plane of Buddhi, into full manifestation upon the physical plane, and this through the utilization of the lower triple sheath. And the solar angels are helping to do this. They are very much a combination of Buddhic force and intelligent force, or Buddhic energy and intelligent energy. When you look at the maps that have been collected in the Cosmic Fire book, we find the solar angel named as present upon the Buddhic plane, particularly. But we know through its number 5 that it has much to do with the principle of intelligence, and since solar angels are, let's say, made within the system of Sirius, Sirius has that fifth ray soul, so there's certainly manas and intelligence involved in what the solar angel becomes as it evolves from the higher sort of human being. Well, okay, we took a little trip back here into Light of the Soul. All these books are worth reading and rereading until they become a very solid structure of thought within our consciousness. So this gives a general picture of the subject of our consideration and gives us the elementary facts upon which all our thoughts must be based. Okay. In occultism, we study at least some of the ABCs of the technicalities of these inner sciences. It is simply the ABC, and as difficult or as strange or as inaccessible as it may seem to our ordinary consciousness, it's just the preliminary foundation of a very advanced inner science. It becomes apparent, therefore, as we study the above, that the aspirant has 3 things to do. And remember, we are talking about the process in terms of the aspirant and not the incarnation at this time of a solar angel or the incarnation of a planetary logos, etc., or even the work of a high initiate who is already an advanced magician. We're talking about mainly here the aspirant. So, first, And let's see here. Make this a little bigger. First, he has to learn the nature of the energies or pranas, which have brought his magical creation, the physical body, into manifestation, and which keeps it in such condition that he can or cannot rapidly achieve the spiritual objectives of the soul. So, if you're going to be a successful magician, you have to know what your instrument is, even though it has been created by the soul nature. Okay. So, this lesson involves A, arriving at a knowledge of those forces which are peculiarly potent in his life and which seem to direct his activities. Let's just say always there will be varying emphases for different people. This will bring to him the knowledge as to which centers of his etheric body are awakened and which are dormant. This, all aspirants, and I think we have to say that the energy of the base of the spine and the energy of the highest head center considered as a whole are the last to awaken fully, especially when you realize that those two energies are involved at the fifth initiation and probably at the sixth as well when we regard the fullness of the head center, maybe even the seventh. But by that time, you have a Maya Virupa, and if you're manifesting on this level of expression. So this will bring to him the knowledge as to which centers are awakened and which are dormant. This all aspirants have to grasp before they really can apply themselves to the real training of discipleship. We have to know the condition in which we find our access to various types of energy. What is flowing in, what is available, what has to be invoked, what has to be really evoked. All right, the lesson involves B, grasping the relation between these forces of nature, which he has appropriated for his own use and which constitutes the sum total of his personal, mental, sentient, and vital energies, and those same forces as they are found in the natural world and govern the manifestation of the macrocosm. So the ability to compare his energy system to the larger macrocosmic energy system. And here the law of analogy will help us. The lesson further involves learning to work with these energies in an intelligent manner in order to bring about three happenings. Now, I assume energies within and energies in the greater macrocosm. Okay, that's it. Okay, they will bring about certain happenings. Number one, an harmonious cooperation with his own solar angel so that solar force may impose its rhythm upon lunar forces. It's one thing to be aware that every human being from the occult perspective, almost every human being, has the solar angel as a supervisor, and it's another thing to learn how really to live one's life so that the streams of energy from the solar angel enter, pervade, enhance the personality mechanism. Okay, here's another happening. I'm going to kind of separate these. An intelligent response to and affiliation. Okay, let's just call this, want to make this easy, happening 1. Okay, let's call this other one happening 2. An intelligent response to and affiliation with the group of world servers who at any given time have undertaken the work of directing by the power of their thought the forces of nature, and so leading the whole creative body forward along the line of divine intent. So the encompassing forces are involved, macrocosmic forces, as well as the forces inherent within one's own microcosmic system. And then maybe this is, okay, that's not happening 2, is it? All of this is part of happening 1, looks like. Let's see. The production on the physical plane of a personality adequate for its creative task and capable of those forms of activity emanating from the mind which will enable him to further work, enable him further to further the work of the directing energies. Okay.
These came back from a search.
Okay. So it pretty well looks like all of this is part of fitting our energy system to work with and respond to higher energies. So let's take a look at this. The production on the physical plane of a personality adequate to the creative task of those forms of activity emanating from the mind which will enable him to further the work, I think that's clear, of the directing energies. So all of this, let's just say, the work in happening 1 is to get the personality nature into that condition in which it can respond to higher spiritual energies which are attempting to direct the process. Okay. Learning to work with those energies in an intelligent manner. So that's the first stage, happening 1. Working with our solar angel, working with the new group of world servers, making sure the personality is fit to express higher possibilities on the physical plane, making sure personality is fit to express higher spiritual possibilities on the physical plane. Okay. Right. Okay. Now, happening 2. Second, learn to live as a soul and therefore free from identification with the body nature. Now, let's just ask, how many of us can do this? How identified are we with the outer instrument? We can theoretically discuss this, but in the last analysis, do we identify with the body and its condition, or do we regard it as an instrument for something more subtle, which we have realized ourselves to be. So let's look at this, the second happening, I think. An ability, this brings out three things. This second of three happenings brings out another triplicity, an ability to withdraw into the head consciousness and from that high place to direct the life of the personal self. Now let's just say the term head consciousness is a little ambiguous. Yeah. Do we mean at the agenus center, perhaps, with the Kundalini having already made its way to the highest head center and then descended again to the place of direction, which would be the agenus center? Okay, another one of these three things that comes out when we learn to live as a soul. It seems so simple, doesn't it? But no, it's not. And we cannot fall into the trap of having the concept and thinking that because we have the concept, we have achieved what the concept indicates. Okay, the power to pass through the various centers in the body, those universal forces and energies which are needed for world work. We can see that this is all of this is a fairly advanced state. And when he talks about universal, well, maybe he's speaking about the higher energies of the cosmic physical plane, step by step. I don't think he's talking about the planes higher than the cosmic physical plane, because even the highest levels of the cosmic physical plane are somewhat, really out of reach for disciples of our type, and this for quite a while until we become the higher initiates. The power to pass through the various centers in the body, those universal forces and energies which are needed for world work. I mean, these energies and forces emanate from very, very high cosmic sources, but they are transformed and adapted to the levels of the cosmic physical plane, and those levels are the ones which we can think about accessing. This has to be done consciously and in full awareness of the source from which they come, of the mode of their activity and the purpose for which they must be used. This involves also the understanding of which force is related to a center. Well, he's given us that kind of information. Let's just say for the disciple, it's Vulcan related to the head center, and Venus to the agenus center, and Saturn to the throat center, and Jupiter to the heart center, Neptune to the solar plexus, Uranus to the sacral center, and Pluto to the base of the spine. So these are planetary sources, and for people of our type, probably that's quite enough. We're not talking about which ones of the 7 solar systems are related to our particular chakras. This probably has a lot more to do with the type of receptivity that a planetary logos would undertake for itself, or let's just say the 7 stars of the Big Dipper. That would concern a planetary logos, and maybe even a solar logos. And only in very greatly reduced transformations and attenuations would it reach us. So I think the planetary level, considering these planetary logoi as sources, is quite the top of what we can deal with in a practical manner. The energies of the constellations, they do reach us, but through signs and through the rays which rule these constellations and through the planets associated with them. So there's always going to be a reduction, a focusing agent for great sources. We're not receiving directly the impress of great constellational logoi. Okay. So this has to be done consciously and in full awareness. This involves also the understanding of the force related to a center. This consequently involves the necessity to develop the centers, to bring them into a state of potency and to harmonize them into a unified rhythm. Why? So we can work with the higher energies as these impact our chakras. The chakras harmonized and more consciously under our control. Okay. And the third factor here, the capacity, therefore, to work at will through the medium of any particular center. And this is only possible when the soul can dwell as the ruler on the throne between the eyebrows. The highest head center has already been reached or stimulated. And maybe we're talking about the ability of the master thus to work through the medium of a particular center. And this is only possible when the ruler, well, who is the ruler? The soul can dwell, but by that time, we're more than the soul. We are understanding our spirit nature, but then again, the soul is a very versatile term and has to do with consciousness at many different levels. The monad, too, has soul, and we might consider the monad as a type of higher soul, the triad as well, and so it goes. The capacity, therefore, to work through the medium of any particular center, this is only possible when the soul can dwell as the ruler on the throne between the eyebrows, and when the Kundalini fire has been what is occultly called raised. This fire has to pass up through the spinal column and burn its way through the web, which separates center from center on the golden rod of power. That golden rod of power, the spine, I think. And of course, there's this kind of references. These kind of references are found in the scriptures under a symbolic presentation. When you see a term like rod, and the rod of initiation, there's some sort of deep connection between the symbolic term and the spinal column and its series of ascending chakras, and that instrument we call the rod of initiation, wielded by the initiator. Okay. So, I'll just underline this, the capacity to work through the medium of any particular center. Well, we have to get our energy system in shape. We have to know the sources from which the energies are coming, and then we have to have such control over our chakric system from that throne between the eyebrows that it can be rightly manipulated, and the system made the recipient of whatever energies are appropriate from these distant or higher sources. So let's just say there is a real training and refinement of the chakric system within the etheric body. Okay, if we're going to learn to live as a soul. That is the second of these happenings. And the happenings themselves, gets a little intricate here, you know. We're learning how to work with these higher energies, and if we can, then certain happenings will be brought about. Okay, I just want to get rid of this. Okay, it's not perfect formatting, but it'll have to do for the moment. And then third, and maybe this is, let's call this happening 3. Third, learn to study the reactions upon others of whatever energy he, through his personality, may be expressing, or which, if he be an initiate and therefore a conscious worker with the plan, it may be his privilege to utilize or transmit. So there's the difference here between expressing and utilization. Okay, a difference between expression and utilization. So looking out at the effect on others and the environment, and through a close study, yes, of his personal effect upon his fellow men as he lives amongst them, and as he thinks, speaks, and acts, he learns the nature of the type of force which may flow through him, and I might say that this is a good method of determining the rays with which one is working. So, you know, we have to become, we note our expression, and gradually we make our way into becoming a conscious wielder of these forces. He can arrive, therefore, at an understanding of its type, its quality, its strength, and its speed. These 4 words warrant consideration and elucidation. We're talking about energies and forces flowing through the disciple or the initiate, and we've been given certain words which qualify that energy or force. Type, quality, I suppose degree of refinement in a way, its strength, and its speed. And I think the different ray types will be found here. Maybe in the type, the second ray will be found, in strength, the first ray, and speed, the third ray. Okay. So now we seem to be getting into a little description of type, quality, strength, and speed. We begin with the letter A, and we're going to go into another section before we encounter the letter B and C. You know, sometimes simply deciphering or working out the organization of the presentation can be a fairly intricate matter. It's all outlined in an organized way, but there's so many different parts and headings and subheadings that it becomes necessary to hold these in mind. So we have, let's maybe do a little review here. We're, you know, probably approaching the hour point, but as I say, I've lost my way due to a problem with the chronometer. So we have, okay, so we have here 3 things to do by each aspirant. And I'll make that, quite a bit bigger so that it stands out. And then the first one is to grasp the nature of the energies which have created his body. Okay. And under this first category are 3 lessons. Let's see how they, in DK's mind, it's all organized, right? And in the third of these lessons, 3 happenings occur. So we're already into subcategories. Cooperating with the solar angel, learning to live as a soul, and this involves 3 subcategories itself. I'm sure it's all going to work out, even if I lose my way. Hopefully you don't. And 3 subcategories here on the second in relation to happening 2, lifting the consciousness to the head, ability to pass various higher energies through the etheric body, and then to work with any particular center, and then going back the third happening, studying the outer effects. So aligning with the solar angel, learning how to access the higher energies, and eventually very consciously work with whatever chakra may be indicated. And then finally studying the outer effect. And now I wonder, when we'll ever get to that point which follows first. Okay, 3 things to do by each aspirant, because we're in many subcategories here of this very first factor, where he's learning the energies that have brought the physical body into existence. So we certainly, in occultism, we do study the energies invisible to most, that most are unaware of, and we study them using the 5th ray, and we try to be meticulous about what they are, where they come from, and what they can accomplish within our vehicles, how we can access them, how we can direct them, and what may be the effect of directing them. So now these energies are coming in, and we're dealing here with quality, type, quality, strength, and speed, and here at least this deals with type. You have to really be one who can access, manipulate, direct energies and forces. I suppose once you start to direct an energy in a specific, toward a specific location, with a specific objective in mind, it becomes classified under the term force. Okay, type. A type of force as used by an aspirant, okay, and let's just say about an hour has passed, give or take 10 minutes. Okay. And this is in program number 8 for the work the rules of magic for the physical plane. Okay, a type of force as used by an aspirant will indicate to him its emanating source, and a study of it will begin to signify to him the entity from which it has emanated. And, here we have a study of astrology and rayology. We know that the sources are living sources. They are logoi. They are of a planetary type, or maybe a stellar type, or a constellational type in astrology. And we know that great rayological sources exist. We are familiar with the idea that from the Great Bear come the streams of energy, which are the will aspect of the seven rays, but the origin of the seven rays goes much, much higher into cosmic septenates, of which we have presently no notion or understanding. A knowledge of the type answers the question, along what line of energy and upon what ray is this force to be found? And I think, when we work with the Tibetan and we attempt to discover our ray energies within our ray formula, this typing of forces is foremost in our mind. A close watch upon this aspect of the work will soon indicate to the aspirant, one, upon what plane he himself may be working. Well, I don't think you would undertake this kind of study if you were just working on the astral plane. It does take a requisite amount of mental focus. The nature of his ray, egoic ray and personality ray, only the initiate of the third degree can ascertain his monadic ray. But, the emphasis is upon the word ascertain. You can, let's just say, you can speculate, but you cannot be certain. And to ascertain means really to determine with certainty. That is the way we can think of that word. The particular tattva that may be involved, and there's a whole chart here on the various tattvas, and I wonder if we should try to go to it somewhere here. It is. Is that it? Is that it? Or are those the outpourings? These are tattvas, and they are energies connected with the different planes. I don't think he has enlarged upon them to a great deal. They appear to be something other than the gunas, which have to do with tamas, rajas, and sattva. So here, here's the list: Adi Tattva, Anapadaka Tattva, Akasha Tattva. Well, and there are probably other names for that because Akasha is sometimes related to the second plane. Vayu Tattva, that's air. Agni Tattva, that's fire. Apas Tattva. Anyway, this corresponds to the water aspect of the astral plane, and Prithvi Tattva corresponds to the earth. So we have not made a great study of the tattvas in DK's work so far, but at least the listing of them is present in this important chart number 2 in a treatise on cosmic fire, and apparently it's included from the Theosophists 118 years ago. Imagine that. Okay. And, the source, we might say, in a way, the planar source of the energy, and then the center through which he may be transmitting the force. It's possible, I think, for the different forces to reach through an aspect of any chakra. Chakras are a lot more complex than we are given to understand. In some of the Hindu books, the details of the structure of the chakra as they conceive it is given. In the Tibetan, we're told that every chakra is threefold, and the central part has to do with the jewel and the first aspect, and the second has to do with the petals, and the third has to do with the foundation, or maybe it's called the calyx, is that it, of the support, the third aspect of the chakra. And we're given, in some cases, a knowledge of the petals, the power of the petals, as found in the egoic lotus, and also in the heart center. Somewhere in Dhyana 2, I think around page 660, are 12 capacities related to the petals of the heart center, but not in such detail in relation to the other chakras and their jewel and the petals. We would have to go to other sources to find those. Okay. So type, we're working with type. And I think, I've spent a lot of my investigation on this question of type, writing books on the rays and how to discriminate one ray from another, and then also in doing these commentaries on the books, talking about the sources of these types, whether they be planetary, stellar, or constellational. And then the other parts have to do, I think, breaking it down a little bit more, minutely. The quality, I guess, has to do with, you can have a ray energy, but is it refined in its use, or have you refined your vehicles to the point where they can really receive that type of energy? And its strength will have to do with the success you've made of the invocation process, the method of relating, the method of accessing, and its speed, I think, is more a third ray factor. All right, now it will be apparent, therefore, that a study of the types of energy is of practical usefulness and will tend to leave no part of the aspirant's nature untouched. We really do have to conceive of ourselves as energy units. We conceive of ourselves, I think, in much less technical ways. We have a name, we have relationships, we have a profession or some work we do in the world, we conceive of ourselves in these larger, more vague terms. But in fact, there is a whole technical language of energy. And when we're looking at the types, we have to access that technical language. And so, we can interpret almost anything we encounter or any person in terms of the ray energy or astrological energy or, well, planetary energy released. The planetary energy itself may be different from the ray energy which passes through it. Well, we're just, I think, at the ABCs, at the level of learning the ABCs of this kind of discriminative work. So he says it will be apparent, therefore, that a study of the types of energy is of practical usefulness and will leave no part of the aspirant's nature untouched. This is all part of man, know thyself, but know thyself with precision and in a technical manner, so that eventually the power to work with the different aspects of one's nature, work appropriately and according to the ray and other planetary and stellar factors, constellational factors, will be mastered by us eventually. Think for a minute of the lessons which can be learned by the man who submits the energy used in verbal expression, for instance, to the scrutiny of the inner ruler. You know, we are the observers standing back from the personality, to the scrutiny of the inner ruler, and who, after talking or after joining in the give and take in daily life, asks himself the questions. And this is a good process during the evening review. A real examination of what energy we have expressed and what is its classification, where does it come from, what prompted it, what was eventually, was it a refined expression, was it a strong expression, was it rapid expression, or did we have to wait a long time before we could sort of gather the ability to release it? What was the type of energy used by me in speech today? This is a good evening review. What was the force that I expended in my contacts with my fellow men? You ask me if I can illustrate this for you. So DK is being very, very practical here. He's really telling us how we can see. All of this is about coming to grips with the types of energies and forces in our environment and in our larger and subtler environment. We just have to become utilizers of the available energies and directed forces and learn how to wield them. This is what it's all about. And a magician can do this to good or bad effect. And as we are attempting to be white magicians, we involve the heart center, and our direction of energy supposedly is of good effect. It's meant to promote the manifestation of the divine plan. So as occultists in training, we simply are learning how to work with energies which are discounted as real by the vast majority. We're learning what they are, where they come from, how to access them, how to bring them safely into the energy system, how to identify their effects within the energy system, how to use the energy system of chakras, let us say, and maybe not only on the etheric levels, but on other levels, to direct these accessed energies and forces into the immediate and more subtle environment to do good, to carry out our part in the manifestation of the divine plan. It all gets a little intricate with all these categories and subcategories, but just generalizing about what we're studying here, I could say that would be it. So, Master DK, knowing the limitations of capacity of all of us, as he says we should consider ourselves as the average aspirant, tries to really get it across and really make it simple so we can understand the practical application there. Of these questions and of the energies we use. Really, think of it. I mean, it's really important to have a bird's eye view, a soul's eye view of the energies and forces we are wielding. Maybe we sort of radiate certain energies, but maybe you can say we direct forces. I think there's a kind of an ambiguity there between those two terms, energy and force. I think they overlap. Maybe one could get very, very specific about them and say that a directed energy is a force, and energy is more like the reservoir which we call upon in order to direct a certain quality of energy in a specific direction, thereby calling it a force. And so, I think when people encounter others, they say, well, that person's energy is very interesting, etc. That's just the general radiation. What you are when you're not willfully directing an energy, but then you might really focus on someone or something and willfully direct that energy in a more concentrated manner. And then it becomes identified as a force. So anyway, can I illustrate this? He says. Now let me attempt to do so, and so make simple what is deemed so oft to be abstruse and difficult. And that, of course, is the quality of any great teacher. Master DK is a master teacher. But I'm thinking about Richard Feynman. He's a very surprising guy with a great sense of humor and a tremendous knowledge of the higher aspects of the new physics, let's say. And he could really break it down for the layman and say, okay, I can teach you everything you have to know about this in maybe an hour or two. And if you want to know the details, go to graduate school for 7 years. I thought that was so good, because maybe the essence of what has to be conveyed can be conveyed with simplicity. And was it Einstein that said basically, well, if you can't explain it, you don't understand it. And I think other people have had that notion as well. And when you're testing yourself as to whether you really do understand something, you try to explain it to someone maybe, and if they can get it, at least on some level, then maybe a sufficient amount of understanding is yours. And if you just make a mess out of it and confuse the one who's listening to you, then maybe you don't understand it as well as you should. So he's attempting to make simple what is often considered so abstruse and difficult. Let the student inquire of himself whether the position he held mentally, and whether the words which he spoke on a particular occasion were prompted by a desire to impose his will upon his hearers. I mean, was his lower ego involved there, seeking some sort of position or eminence, some higher position than that of his listeners, always reminding the listener that they know less. You find disciples that do that. This imposition of his could be either right or wrong. Okay, well, it depends on the circumstance, doesn't it? When right, it would mean that he was speaking under the impulse of his spiritual will. And somewhere it says, it is a worthy thing or a noble thing to be an agent of the imposition of the will of God. I think it's in discussing the political workers in Discipleship, Volume 1. So he might be, speaking with great authority from Atma, from the spiritual will, and then it would be right because his purpose is not to put others down, but simply to create a hierarchical order of things that must be done, or essentials and lesser essentials and still lesser essentials, establishing the most essential in an authoritative manner. So the imposition of his will could be either right or wrong. When right, it would mean he was speaking under the impulse of the spiritual will, that his words would be in line with soul, purpose, and intent, and would be governed by love, and therefore would be constructive, helpful, and healing. Well, we see DK speaking with authority in those letters to his students, but there is so much understanding and so much compassion and so much love and so much realization of what they're going through and that he has gone through, that even though they are authoritative, they are not hurtfully authoritative. You'll know the difference. You'll know when someone is trying to, let's say, lord it over you, and convince you of how much more he knows than you know, or whether that individual who may know more and may have a greater will is actually trying to be really helpful. His attitude would be one of detachment, and he would have no desire to take prisoner the mind of his brother. What a wonderful way of expressing it. No one has a right to sway a brother's mind, we're told in those three sort of injunctions. Enter thy brother's heart, enter thy brother's mind, blend with thy brother's soul, is found in this book. But if his words were prompted by self-will and by the desire to impose his ideas upon other people and so to shine in their presence, or to force them to agree with his conclusions, his method would then be destructive, dominating, aggressive, argumentative, forceful, rude, or irritable, according to his personality, trends, and inclinations. This would indicate the right or wrong use of the first ray. Well, it seems pretty clear, doesn't it? So I'll contrast this, and we'll see there. Okay. Well, we've encountered both, haven't we? And there are many pitfalls along the way, and we have to learn how to deal with our superiors and those who are on the same level as we are, and those who have not yet learned as much. And probably at every level, there will be a kind of skill. I love this, though. It's so, in some way, humorous, and yet it's so current and real. It just happens. And therefore, we're told that when we enter a brother's mind, we don't have the right to sway his mind. But he will say he loves, he knows, he sees, or something, he thinks with me, and I am strong to do the right, and so forth. And to take prisoner, this is the Bucyrus approach. You have to think, believe, think, talk as your teacher talks, according to the thoughts that your teacher has sanctioned, and you lose the ability to think for yourself and to determine from your own great fund of inner intuition what is true. And then, in fact, you become incapacitated, really, because the dominance of another is robbing you of the opportunity to use your own abilities. Well, okay, so DK has said, this is simple. Now let me attempt to do so, and so make simple what is deemed abstruse and difficult. I don't think it's so difficult if we look at it as he's looking. But we should always have our capacity for understanding open whenever we deal with anyone. Every moment gives the opportunity to understand and to see things in the broader energy context. You can imagine what the passage of the energies looks like to Master DK, long ago having passed the third initiation when that first passage is realized. But it's the perceptions involve the impact of energies and forces upon energy units, force units. And he sees this in specific terms, and then, like a good physician, knows what to prescribe, what will be the remedy. Should the type of force he wields be that of the second ray, he can submit it to a similar analysis. So basically what we're saying here is analyze the energies and forces with which you deal and which you express. He will then find it to be based on group love, service, compassion, or upon a selfish longing to be liked, on sentiment and on attachment. So, he's giving us the pros and cons of what we might see when we analyze what has come forth from us in our expression according to our ray. Now, what ray is that? Maybe it's the major ray that we're dealing with. Maybe it's the soul ray, Or if we're not to that point, then it's some ray or other. Always there will be a ray which is dominant, and, students of our type are trying to make sure that the personality ray becomes, in a way, the subdominant, to use musical terms, Subdominant leading to dominant, leading to tonic, okay. And the tonic being the monad, in whatever octave we want to deal with it. So, a lot of second-rate people in this work. So when we analyze the words, the energy, the radiation, the actions that have gone forth from us, are they based on group love, service, and compassion, or upon a selfish longing to be liked, on sentiment, liking and disliking, and on attachment? His words will indicate to him if he will closely study them. They will indicate this if he will closely study his words. Well, this is one of the purposes for the evening review. Similarly, if he is using third-rate force in a personal matter, he will be devious in his propositions, subtle and elusive in his arguments, using manipulation in his relations to his fellow men, or be an interfering busybody actively engaged in running the world and managing other people's lives for them, or in grasping so firmly the reins of government in his own self-interest that he will sacrifice everything and everybody for the work of furthering his own busy ends. Well, you kind of wonder as you look at the political situation today and maybe in general, when you have a first ray and a third ray without the application of the second ray, presence of the second ray, you do kind of have what he is describing here, and we do see a lot of it. People with that ray combination really want to be in control and will use the intelligence and this devious mentality to ensure that they are in control. I wonder if I can use a green there. Oh, it's kind of just too dark. So I just don't think I can do that. Yeah, well, I did it. Let's see what happens here. No color. And, okay. So now what I want to do, it says stop highlighting. So maybe I can do that. And then I will have, yeah. Now start highlighting. And let's see if I can make this more visible. Yeah. If he is, however, a true disciple or aspirant, he will work with the plan and will wield third-ray force to bring about the loving purposes of the spiritual reality. So to bring about, you might say, to see manifested the loving purposes of the spiritual reality. He will be busy and active, and his word will carry truth, and he will lead to the helping of others, for they will be detached and true. So what do we have? Detached and true words, manifesting the plan, and reality. And with great activity. I guess the whole business community is so much run by the third ray, and we know how relatively active it is compared to the more ponderous and pondering approach of the second ray. Now we're still on point A here. I get lost in all the subcategories. Maybe you can keep it straight. I'm just going along the best I can here. And let's see, happening 1, happening 2, happening 3, and here is A. Okay, 4 words that we are considering, and I'm going to make them big, these letters. Okay, really big, okay. All right. Now we enter a new section, but we're certainly not yet on the letter B. Okay, entering a new section. Okay, so let's get into this subsection here called the use of the hands. And we're still dealing with how to work with energy under subcategory A, which I've made so big I can't miss it. There it is. The type of force as used by an aspirant will indicate to him its emanating source, and we just have to be observant enough to see ourselves expressing certain types of energy, and perhaps then we can see the plane from which it comes, the planets or the zodiacal signs associated with it, the rays associated with it, and be clearer about what we are expressing. So the use of the hands. It is of value here when we are dealing with the wielding of force. Now that's what we're dealing with here, okay? Coming under our own will, our own volition, and learning how to do this more and more successfully with subtle energies. It is, excuse me, it is of value here when dealing with the wielding of force to give a little information anent the use of the hands in such work. One of the masters has said, quote, "It is but with armed hand and ready either to conquer or perish that the modern mystic can hope to achieve his object." That's an amazing thought. You kind of wonder who he's quoting, you know. I have a feeling that to a great extent he's quoting Master KH, but, you know, I can't be sure. It is but with armed hand and ready either to conquer or perish that the mystic can hope to achieve his object. I intend to speak a few words about the hands, for there is more occult teaching in these words than is apparent on the surface. In one of the old books available for the instruction of disciples, these words are found. The armed hand is an empty hand, and this protects its possessor from the accusations of his enemies. It is a hand freed from the taint of the four symbolic evils: gold, lust, the dagger, and the finger of enticement. Well, you know, we can certainly look at the third ray, gold, the second ray, lust, and the dagger as the first ray. As for the finger of enticement, it seems like temptation. It seems very scorpionic. It's hard to maybe put a ray to it. So it's not what we have thought. The arming of the hand is really, from the conventional perspective, the disarming of the hand. And only the empty, nail-marked hands can offer the blessing to humanity. And this means, of course, that one has passed through the crucifixion and has asked nothing for the separated self, wants nothing for the separated self, and simply is intent on serving the good. Yeah, this is beautiful. I want to make it a little bigger to point out its importance. Okay. The armed hand is an empty hand, and this protects its possessor from the accusations of his enemies. After all, he wants nothing for the separated self and is gathering nothing for the enhancement of his personality per se. It is a hand freed from the taint of the four symbolic evils: gold, lust, the dagger, and the finger of enticement, which I suppose, again, temptation. These words are most significant, and it might be well to study briefly the type of hands and their quality which are distinctive of disciples. In all forms of esoteric teaching, the hands play a great part, and this for reasons. And when we look at the hand, we are looking at an extension of Mercury. And, the number 5 and the manifestation of intelligent manipulation upon the physical plane, but also the directing of force etherically. So the hands are the symbol of acquisitiveness. Okay, these are the 4 reasons why the hands are so important. 4 reasons why the hands are so important in the esoteric teaching. They are the symbol of acquisitiveness. They are centers of force. They are wielders of the sword. It looks like the dagger there, and the acquisitiveness relates to the gold. And they are, when employed unselfishly, instruments of healing and agencies whereby certain keys are turned. So this is the importance. Acquisitiveness, centers of force, the possible first ray application, the wielder of the sword, and I guess maybe the fist has to enter there under Vulcan, the hammer effect. But when employed unselfishly, this is what we intend to do. They are instruments of healing and agencies whereby certain keys are turned. We think about the keys, various keys to the ageless wisdom that are listed in Cosmic Fire. There are many. The psychological key, the philosophical key, the mathematical key. I can't, name them all, but we could go there and take a look at the ways of entry into the arcana of life. Now, maybe he's going to take them step by step here. Viewing them as symbols of acquisitiveness, it must be remembered that, well, what should we call it? The grasping hand for oneself. Viewing them as symbols of acquisitiveness, it must be remembered that in the average man they are employed to grasp and to hold and to acquire that which the man wants for himself and for the satisfaction of his selfish desire. Only the empty, nail-marked hands. I wonder, maybe I looked that up, because it's so, don't remember the rest of it, but okay, maybe here we have it. Right. It's in the Catechism. Only the empty nail-marked hands can keep the chain complete. This chain of hierarchy, this chain of the descent of the higher energies and the ascent of the one who is rising. How to how to climb the ladder, that is the question. Okay, sorry there. I have many things going at the same time, and occasionally the phone rings and I must attend. It's either that or just spend all kinds of time erasing and doing other things. So I'm just choosing to plow on ahead. But let me read this because I think it's so important about the hands. Pass they with ease that mount that limb and leave the fourth behind, the fourth kingdom of nature. They pass through tears, through clouds and mists. They suffer and they die. They bid adieu to all earth's friends. They mount the way alone. They bridge the gap with loving deeds done in the pain of living. They lift one hand aloft to him who standeth just above. They lean one downward to the man who standeth next below. The hands freed from the traverse arms are freed but to be held. Only the empty, nail-marked hands can keep this or the chain complete. This is the chain of hierarchy. So it is somehow, very appropriate in what we are studying here. Now we go to the spiritual man. In the spiritual man, the hands are still symbols of acquisitiveness, but he only grasps that which is needed for the helping of the group, and releases at once towards that end that which he has acquired. So the hands can grasp, the hands can give. The initiate holds nothing for himself. The savior of the race may utilize all that is laid up in the divine storehouse, but not for himself, only for those he seeks to help. Well, this is so very clear. And as we learn to relinquish, it will become more and more true of ourselves. I mean, we take, use, and demand. We take but to give. We take but to give. The initiate holds nothing for himself. The savior of the race may utilize all that is laid up in the divine storehouse, but not for himself, only for those he seeks to help. So that's the question of acquisitiveness, right? Or the grasping by the hand, the grasping hand for oneself, or the grasping hand for others. And we will know whether we are grasping for ourselves or whether we have the welfare of others in mind. Now, as centers of force, the hands play a most potent part, and one that is little understood. It is an occult fact that the hands of a disciple, once he has acquired that acquisitiveness which is based on unselfish group work, become transmitters of spiritual energy. Well, there's something first to fulfill, isn't there, before the hands can really be activated in this new way. The laying on of hands is no idle phrase nor confined solely to the operations of the episcopate of any faith. The occult laying on of hands can be studied in 4 aspects. Okay, so what was this called? Ramakrishna was, Shaktipat. Okay. Laying on of hands, Shaktipat. if I'm spelling that correctly. He used to hold these little gatherings, and in these gatherings he would touch various of his disciples, and they would be charged with energy accordingly. They would be charged from the touch. And some he saw were ready to be touched in that way, and others from his biography, as was it Vivekananda that wrote that? I'm trying to remember. But anyway, the biography, two biographies together, one of Ramakrishna and one of Vivekananda, and Ramakrishna is shown as hesitating to touch some because he saw they were not ready for that enlivening touch. So how can we study this laying on of hands? Four ways of study. In healing, in this case, the force which flows through the hands comes from a dual source and via two etheric centers, the spleen and the heart. Vitality is involved here, also the energy of love, I think. But when you're dealing with the spleen, which is strictly speaking a pranic center, you're dealing with vitality. Number two, in the stimulation of any specific center, the energy employed in this case comes from the base of the spine and the throat and must be accompanied by appropriate words. Well, the base of the spine is the center which keeps us in incarnation. It is our anchor, and the fact that the throat center is involved shows the reliance upon the appropriate and effective words. Number three, in the linking a man up with his ego, in the work of linking a man up with his ego, how is this done? The force used here must be received from three etheric centers, the solar plexus, the heart, and the center between the eyebrows. Now, this is interesting because in Dhyana 2, meditations 1 and 2, these three centers are featured as central. So maybe there is some kind of linking up going on with the meditation which the Tibetan has given us. And in group work, here energy is utilized emanating from the ego via the head center, the throat center, and the base of the spine. So we have here true energy specificity in the use of the hands to accomplish certain ends in certain contexts. So healing, I'll just, do that. In the stimulation of any specific center, interesting to see which chakras are used in the linking up of a man with his ego, and maybe when we're thinking of doing that, linking more directly with our ego, the higher ego, these centers can be visualized, and in group work, the ego and the head center. This is probably the most advanced that is here listed, and the throat center and the base of the spine. Okay, so head center, throat center, and base of the spine. I don't think that when we look at the C groups, that any particular C group is dealing with these three centers particularly. Always the head center is there, but when we're dealing with the base of the spine center, other centers than the throat center are involved. But it looks like this is very close to the stimulation of any specific center. And so number 2 and 4 seem related, except that we have the head center added. And of course, the ego is present. Well, you can see that it's going to be quite a science. And when we're given the foundations of this science, we just have to know it is the foundation. It will be apparent, therefore, that the science of the hands is a very real one, and the disciple has to learn the nature of the forces in the different centers, how to transmit and unify them, and then, by an act of will, how to pass them outward through the chakras in the hands. All right. And obviously, this is the kind of thing that is not yet, anyway, written in books, because it's too easily falling into the hands of those who have not done the other necessary preliminary work. But we get an idea here. And many of us, I think, spontaneously use our hands in the spiritual work, blessing and contacting and radiating. And here we're just getting a little more specific about which centers stand behind the kind of work we want to do, and usually the soul energy is there behind it all. Well, you kind of wonder, here is Sanat Kumara as the initiator, or even the Christ a bit earlier, stimulating various centers in the candidate for initiation, and to what extent are the centers listed here utilized in the initiator, by the initiator. So I'd say let's memorize these: the spleen and heart in healing, the base of spine and throat in stimulating any particular center. But of course we're held back by not knowing the appropriate words, but we can get the idea and perhaps use that appropriate idea, since we know what each center does and why we might be trying to stimulate it. But in general, I think we better stay away from this kind of thing until we know more with real accuracy. Linking a man up with his ego, okay, well, we oftentimes visualize that in the healing process. But solar plexus, heart, and ajna, I guess, is what he means by the center between the eyebrows. And as I said, we're sensitizing the group astral body, harmonizing it when we use meditations 1 and 2 in Dhyana 2, Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 2. And then the ego, which is mentioned for the first time here. Group work, well, the soul is group conscious. This is what this is all about. And that's why energies from the ego promote group work. And the head center, which is synthetic, is involved. And maybe the group will work through specific centers, and those can be stimulated, as we see here, by the base of the spine and the throat. I guess the base of the spine is a Kundalini center. It has a huge will force eventually, and is even the major center at the fifth initiation. And the throat utters the creative words, which bring stimulation, which bring activity. But there's much more, we're just given a little here, and we can think about it. The hands do their work either directly or through the projection of a steady flow once the blended currents have been tapped, or indirectly, or by manipulation. Okay, so these are the methods by which the hands do their work, directly or through the projection. You blend different chakras, different centers, and the blended stream comes out through the hands. Or indirectly, let's see if he tells us what that means, or by manipulation. And maybe, the different ray energies are involved here. Through a knowledge of the law, a disciple can not only utilize the currents flowing through the centers of his own body, but can combine them with the planetary or cosmic currents to be found in his environment. So this is all about the blending of the microcosmic with the sensed, or with the well ascertained macrocosmic, considering those as nouns. This is done unconsciously frequently by speakers who magnetically use the hands to an extent, and the effect as seen to any extent, and the effect is seen by a clairvoyant, as seen by a clairvoyant, are often amazing. When this work is done consciously, a most potent factor is added to the equipment of the chela. So this science of the hands is a necessary acquisition for the disciple. Okay. Science of the hands. And a very practical one, and we can understand that certain things are simply given out directly and in person, and not through the books, or they have to be somehow discovered or re-remembered according to what the soul knows, and maybe according to what we once knew, bits and pieces, fragments that we can bring together. Okay. In this connection, it must be borne in mind that the matter is a very abstruse one, and that certain ray forces pass along the line of least resistance from left to right and others from right to left. Certain centers transmit their energy via the right hand and others via the left. Much knowledge is therefore required in order to work scientifically. Yeah. I suppose we have to understand which hand represents form and which hand, or objectivity, and which hand represents subjectivity. And I think there are arguments on either side. When we do take the left-hand path, it is the path of imprisonment by form, and the right hand might be considered the hand of liberation. But I think that has to be blended with the idea that rays 1, 3, 5, and 7, especially 3, 5, and 7, particularly relate to the form and objectivity, and rays 2, 4, and 6 to the inner life, the subject. So there, we're being introduced to this idea, and we see how if we make mistakes and don't understand with clarity, how we might do damage to whomever we're trying to assist. There are so many factors in occultism that we need the humility to just say, okay, I know just about nothing, and am willing to learn. The time spent in claiming that one knows something is wasted time compared to what might be learned if a person becomes truly teachable. Okay, so scientific work with the hands, that's what we're in the wielding of energies, which is our subject. The scientific work with the hands is indispensable. Okay. I have no time to take up in detail the meaning of the hands as they wield the sword, save to point out that the sword is a symbol, as a symbol stands for many things, and this is not necessarily the dagger, okay? The dagger usually has a very negative connotation, so this is not necessarily the dagger, but can be the sword of discrimination as well as the sword of destruction. But then too, the sword of liberation, cutting the threads which bind our consciousness to form. So the sword can stand for many things, and let's see what some of those things might be. One, the sharp two-edged sword is the discriminative faculty which reaches to the roots of the chela's being and separates the real and true from the false and impermanent. We might say it resides between the mental plane and the Buddhic plane. But from another perspective, since discrimination rules the fourth subplane, this sword also resides between the lower mind and the higher mind. It is wielded by the ego from the mental plane and is spoken of as the sword of cold blue steel. Well, we have the idea of the clear cold light. We have its unbreakableness as steel, which is a blend of iron and other metals. And the blueness has to do with entering into reality. This color is characteristic of the soul of our planet and the soul of our solar logos and solar system. So it is wielded from the mental plane, the sharp two-edged sword of the discriminative faculty. I come to bring not peace, but the sword, and we can add of discrimination, said the Christ. And we're certainly having quite an opportunity these days to see that sword in action as evil is presented alongside good, and are we at last in a sufficient position of acute perception to identify the difference, and of course to throw the weight of our energy upon the side of the good. But it's a sinuous line, sometimes this line between good and evil, and difficult to identify the line between the real and the unreal, between the mental plane, and which is still the top of the dense physical body of the solar logos and the cosmic ethers, and then this other more common line of demarcation for disciples such as we are between the lower concrete mind, the peak of the personality, and the soul nature, as we normally call it, found on on two of the higher three subplanes. Okay, so the many characteristics of the sword. Let's see, we have here, there it is. Acquisitiveness, centers of force, and the wielders of the sword. Okay, so the hands as centers of force. And this is the second part. Okay. So let's call this part 2. And maybe we can part 1 here in terms of acquisition. I don't know if we can connect these with the rays, maybe to a certain extent. Certainly, this wield of the sword can be connected with the first ray and the factor of, let's see, what do we have here? Acquisition can be connected with the third ray. Even in the method of destroying the causal body, a great acquisition of knowledge and skill is appropriated and brought into the causal body. I guess if we were to look here at the rays, letters on occult meditation, maybe around page 17 or so, we would see when the egoic ray is the ray of adaptability, this method of preparing for the destruction of the causal body is not a driving forward so much, not so much the gradual expansion as the systematic adaptation of all knowledge and means to the end in view. It is in fact a process of the utilization of the many for the use of the one. It is more, and here we go, it is more an accumulation of needed material and quality for helping the world and the amassing of information through love and discrimination that eventually causes the shattering of the causal body. It's very good. We will take up, God willing, as it were, the discussion of Letters on Occult Meditation. A wonderful book and very pithy, very to the point, and dealing with foundational matters in a very deep way, so much so that it can often be, its value can be overlooked. But we'll take that up when, maybe next, after this. Okay, so now we have the next use of the sword of renunciation, or that double-bladed axe which the Chela willingly applies to anything he considers likely to hold him back from his goal. It is applied primarily to the things of the physical plane. Well, it's kind of interesting because in the old days, the executioner's axe was looked like the double-bladed axe at times. Maybe different methods were used. I'm recalling that to execute Anne Boleyn, there was something called French swords, and maybe some axes were not double-bladed. But, cutting one thing from another, either for good purposes or for ill, the disciple too must learn how to cut one thing from another and to let go of attachment. So this is the sword of renunciation or of detachment. Double-bladed, it has to cut both ways. It would just be superfluous if the second blade were not going to be used. I can see it being applied to the personality, but DK says here primarily to the things of the physical plane. And if we learn how to truly renounce little things along the way, we've been told we are preparing for the great renunciation at the fourth degree, which indicates our achievement for this cycle. Now, what else? So this is interesting about the sword, isn't it? Now, this looks powerful. The sword of the spirit, and notice he does call this a weapon. In general, the sword is a weapon. The beam of light of the unicorn's horn, they are essentially the same, can also be considered a weapon, and it's used in the technique of light and the work with glamour individually and as a group. The sword of the spirit is that weapon which in the hands of the disciple cuts down before the eyes of the group. He is serving the obstacles which stand in the way of group progress. Okay. It is that weapon which in the hands of the disciple cuts down before the eyes of the group. The group is group conscious, or increasingly so, but there's a oneness consciousness looming on ahead, which is more than group consciousness, and perhaps some of the disciples in the group will know the way of introducing the group to a still higher state of homogeneity. It is only wielded safely by those who have trained their arms to wield the other swords, and in the hands of an initiate is a most potent factor. Well, I think Master DK is wielding that sword as he is preparing his groups for true functioning. He's cutting away many things, or at least indicating to the disciples what must be cut away. So 3 swords, I believe, are here indicated. Looks like it. Okay, so 3 types of swords. Okay, now the old commentary has something to say about this, it looks like. The old commentary, to which reference has been oftentimes made, says, I guess it's about the swords, isn't it? The steel is needed for the transmission of the fire. So we have something involving the spirit here. When the force of the inner man is coupled with the energy transmitted through the chakras of the palms, it passeth down the shining blade and blendeth with the force of the one who is the all. Thus is the plan consummated. So this deals with consummation. Interesting about steel, I'm not sure the different types of steel, and different ways of preparing it these days. I suppose we could, take a quick look at how steel is defined and what its definition is. And it's an alloy of iron and carbon and other elements. Because of its high tensile strength and low cost, it is a major component used in buildings, infrastructure, etc. What is steel made of? Composed simply of iron and carbon. Carbon steel accounts for 90% of the steel production. Low alloy steel is alloyed with other elements, usually molybdenum, manganese, chromium, or nickel, in amounts of up to 10% by weight to improve the hardenability of thick sections. All right, well, let's copy that one. And okay, let's just say that this is steel, and it has occult meanings. At first we were in the Iron Age, before steel came into existence, and various people have taken names which suggest a steely quality of strength. Excuse me. I'm thinking about how close the name Stalin is to steel. I'm thinking about Hitler's name. At least in English, it suggests aggression, the hit. It probably has other meanings in German. But his name was not that at first. Something like Schicklgruber, and not Hitler at all. And Stalin's original name, Joseph, something like Vasily, a longer Georgian name, but they chose that to emphasize their strength. They chose shorter names. Yeah, it's almost on the tip of my tongue what his Georgian name is, but escapes me just a little bit. Maybe I just put real name of Stalin. And Djugashvili, Yosef, Djugashvili. I remembered it just as it was appearing. Djugashvili. Stalin, a disciple of Shambhala, says the Tibetan. And you can see there, how much Scorpio there is in the face, a lot of Scorpio. And although it is set, and look at the tinted eyebrows there, which signals Scorpio, and the the low brow, which signals to me, Capricorn, there is this question about his birth time. He seems to have always concealed it from people, and there are just so many charts for him. But it looks a whole lot more Capricorn than it looks Sagittarius, and yet he's said to be born in the last degree of Sagittarius, and he did study for the ministry or the priesthood or something of that nature, but the face is Capricornian, and the chin is Capricornian, and not Sagittarian. So there's some secret or mystification operating there. Anyway, the choosing of names can mean a lot when you're trying to be influential with people, and the steel has a great power here in transmission of fire. And we seem to, passing down the shining blade, you kind of wonder, are we talking again about the spinal column? Maybe. Fire down the blade. And you may have noticed that that sometimes when one wants to conceal the sword, they put it, sort of back here behind, and it runs along the spine. There have, been a number of instances, films that show this happening, and thus it might be added, is the energy of the unit augmented by the force of the greater whole? Okay, and blendeth, it passeth down the shining blade, and blendeth with the force of the one who is the all. So this is a reaching into very high forces, which are macrocosmic, and the blending with the microcosmic forces. And it takes this to bring the plan for the individual to consummation. Sounds like a high initiation, I think. Okay. Well, that's powerful. The old commentary references this sword of the spirit, I guess. This probably high initiation. This old commentary section probably references the sword of the spirit. Okay. And thus, it might be added, is the energy of the unit augmented by the force of the greater whole. And that is an objective for all of us, an objective to let greater centers of force flow through our microcosmic system until eventually the whatever is this force of the whole flows through. Now, we can't talk about the whole universe, can we? We have to stop somewhere with some kind of higher being that sends forth a force which can be tolerated by the microcosmic man. It is, let's get rid of Mr. Stalin. It's hard to say, well, I think he'd like to wear gray, and maybe gray is the appropriate color, not all white, not all black. It is said in the occult books and likewise in the secret doctrine that all initiates must be healers, just as he says that if you find yourself entering into the hierarchy, you are necessarily a psychologist, esoteric psychologist, and probably a healer as well, because a certain wholeness and integration and synthesis has been achieved in your energy system, which is inductive of more integration in those who are reached by your radiation. Therefore, that all initiates use the palm of the hands in the work of healing. Only those, therefore, who have wielded the sword dare lay the sword down and stand with empty hands uplifted in blessing. Their previous wielding of the sword protects them. So the wielding of the sword, discrimination, renunciation, and spirit, the sword of spirit, by means of this sword, much higher energies are appropriated by the initiate. Well, you get the sense of what a great depth is here and how shallow is the present penetration. But if we persist, the deeper meanings will come to us. Only the armed hand can safely be used in the work of salvation. Now we do remember, which is the empty hand. Only those who have taken the kingdom of heaven by force, this has a lot to do with first ray monads, or at least with the use of the first ray, and who are occultly known as the violent ones, can take the heavenly supply and use it in the work of healing. A very first ray approach. The approach of Paul. This should be carefully borne in mind. The true healing force can only flow through those who in some degree, either directly by rite of initiation or of advanced discipleship, or indirectly as being used on the inner side by some adept or advanced healer, are linked with the hierarchy. So, hierarchy, healing is a hierarchical matter, really. Healing implies connection to the energy of hierarchy. So do all of us have to fight our way there as the violent ones, or is that a particular method? The first ray type heals by throwing tremendous vitality, as I recall, into the system of the one to be healed. Now, any healing process can bring an extension of life in form, or it can bring liberation from the form, and that's a double method, the second part of which we're not usually taking into consideration. In other words, if the healer ends up killing the one to be healed, this is not looked at as healing, and yet in terms of the process of promoting liberation of the inner man from the binding form, it may be very much what is required, and a true healing, a true liberation from the confinement of a outworn or worn out form. A man should know his status before he can rightly heal. This does not apply to those healers who are unconscious workers, being powerful transmitters of prana and solar vitality. Their name is Legion, and they do much good, even though at times the energy they transmit serves to stimulate wrongly. So, but who does this apply to? It applies to someone who is conscious of the healing art, right? Of the healing art. Okay. So now what we've been dealing with is several we've been dealing with acquisition, with the hands as centers of force, with wielders of the sword, and then, followed by instruments of healing. That's what we're on now. This is the hand as instruments of healing, and following that comes the one who turns the key, the hand as that which turns the key. So here, here's the sword, and here's the factor of healing. This relates to the fourth item in the list above. Being a healer, and then turning the key. Okay. Sometimes there's so much information given by the Tibetan. As I say, I struggle to put it in order. Okay. As regards the use of the hands in turning keys, I will simply, so this is part B. Part B of item 4 above. As regards the use of the hands in turning keys, I will simply give a hint. Only those hands can turn the key in the door of initiation who have learnt the art of the centers. The significance of the hands in service, the wielding of the swords, different kinds of swords for every person maybe, or maybe one person wields a number of different swords at different stages of his development, and the 4 positions in which the hands are held in group service. I suppose some of them, the linking of hands. We're told about passing through the door of initiation by linking hands with your brother, and then the door somehow provides entree for those who are undergoing group initiation. And we know that groups stand like this as well. 4 positions, he has not dealt with these, but we can possibly imagine what they are. So here's a hint. Only those hands can turn the key, in the door. And let's make it quite big. Who have learned the art of the centers, the significance of the hands in service, and the wielding of the swords, and the 4 positions in which the hands are held in group service. These must be, in a way, let's say, modes of relationship with one's group, brothers and sisters. I guess the hands generally touch, they transmit, they touch, they grasp, they do various things which define our relationship with those who may be in the groups in which we find ourselves. So the study of hands relates then to healing, to stimulations of specific centers, to linking up the man with his ego, and in group work. Now, I wonder if they're used in linking up the group with the group ego. There's a lot of complexity here, and I think it just has to be studied step by step. So this is the use of the hands. Okay. Just a little on this scientific study. Study, therefore, the type of force which you usually wield. Know along what line of ray energy it comes, and so arrive at a truer knowledge of yourself and of your own inner capacities, and ascertain likewise what types of energy you may lack and how your equipment may be duly rounded out. This seems to be the whole purpose of this section, to deal with energies which eventually we have to learn how to access and to wield, and to do so correctly. Now it looks like we finally have come to point B, and let's look at that. Point A occurred quite a while ago, and let's review what A was. And I'm going to make this very big, big enough anyway, and this is going to be B. A number of pages ago, we started with point A, and I made it so big that I shouldn't have trouble finding it. The type of force is used by an aspirant will indicate to him its emanating source, and a study of it will begin to signify to him the entity, maybe a ray lord, let's say, from whom that energy has emanated. Okay, I'm just going to, right, there it is, that's A. So we have been discriminating the energies, attracting the energies, wielding the energies, and one of the major ways of wielding energy is to use the hands in the right way, acquiring for others and then giving, and as centers of force that can take blended energies and direct them, and as wielders of the sword of discrimination, detachment, or renunciation, and finally the energizing aspect of spirit, the sword of spirit, which links us, the little microcosm, with the greater macrocosm. And then after the wielding of the sword, the hands again as instruments of healing. Okay. Here are the swords. Okay. Okay, now here, let's just say, let's call this the sword. The wielding of the sword. And then finally, we're getting into the healing per se. But we have to fulfill all these things before, at last, we can make their synthesis. He gives us one hint about turning the key. Master all these different methods as they are given. Learn how to, let's see here. learn how to use, how to acquire, learn how to blend forces and direct them with the hands, learn how to wield the sword with the hands. In short, learn how to heal, and then maybe the keys can be turned. And generally the keys offer entree into a larger field of subtle energy and give entree into what we might call the wider life. Let's do a little more here. As I said, I have no idea really where I am. This is bringing us back to speed, as I recall. Yes, that was the last factor mentioned as we began. So maybe we can work our way towards the treading of the way, which is an entirely new section, I believe. Yes, it is, and it's getting very practical as we move along here. The quality of the force used is necessarily dependent upon the ray from which it may emanate. You asked me to differentiate between the words type and quality. Well, I made a stab at it up there a long time ago, and let's see if there was any correctness in what I proposed. I would say that the type of force indicates the life aspect, whilst the quality indicates the consciousness aspect, and that both of them are aspects of the entity or the being who is the embodiment of a ray. Well, we're used to him defining life and consciousness as two aspects, and then I suppose form would be the third. Sometimes he calls them life, quality, and appearance. The type will manifest primarily through what we call dynamic direction and through its power to produce an effect. Right? Fair enough. And let's see if we can. I had used quality in terms of refinement, but I think he's taking a different tack here. Let's see. Whoop. All right. So the type will manifest primarily through what we call dynamic direction. It's got a lot of the first ray and the life aspect, although, we have to also differentiate life, being, substance, ultimate substance from the first ray or will. We have to differentiate that, I would say. The type will manifest primarily through what we call dynamic direction and through its power to produce an effect. This has, of course, to be coupled to right quality and skill in action. The quality will be indicated more by its power of attractive approach. It has in it more of the magnetic aspect than type has. Okay, well, maybe this is more relational, more magnetic in the second ray sense. Okay, this has, of course, to be coupled to right quality and skill in action. And skill in action, well, this suggests the third aspect, skill in action. The quality will be indicated more by the power of attractive approach. So quality relates to coherence. It has in it more of the magnetic aspect than the type has. But remember, of course, he does also relate magnetism to the first ray, so things get quite intricate here. Students can arrive at the quality of the force they may be using by noticing what they attract to themselves. And here the question of refinement does enter. Because we may attract along a ray line, but the question is, what is the caliber, the status of that which we attract along the ray line? Now, I just have to see whether I've reached that point again where things are not saving. And I'm going to, I'll try. And it seems to have worked that time. Students can arrive at the quality of the force they may be using by noticing what they attract to themselves and the degree of refinement, of purity, of what they attract along a certain ray line. We can, if we're on the first ray, we can attract great leaders or murderers, let us say. All that is possible. Okay. Both in circumstances, in people, and in the reactions which people show to what the student may do. Okay, I'm going to put this in the purple color and try, because I've commented in between. Both in circumstances, what do we attract to ourselves? Well, look around. Look at the environment. Look at the people around us. Look at the outer effect. It will tell us something about not only the type, but it's the vibration. There's a range of vibrations within a certain type. There are a range of frequencies within any given type, and the refinement of what we attract within that type will be indicated. A ray is a vast range of energies, and people can respond to rays, let us say, to the type with various degrees of purity. And, we can find something very, very low, from a kind of miserable weakness on the second ray all the way to a Buddha or a Christ, with all kinds of intermediary stages. So look around and see, because where you are is in a way what you have released in terms of certain types and qualities of energy. In the type, there is a preponderance of the will aspect. In the quality, the desire aspect is primarily to be found. So he's connecting it with the life, quality, and appearance idea. It is profoundly true that according to a man's desires, so will be the forms of life which he will, like a magnet, attract to himself. Okay, so he's basically working with one of the triplicities that he's done a lot of work with, life, quality, appearance. Quality, appearance. And he hasn't yet said too much about the appearance. We have strength. Notice he's saying much less. And what did we have up here? We had the strength, we had the speed, we had the quality, maybe we had the type. Okay, let's review, reviewing the 4 words. We have type, quality, strength, and speed. And he's giving much less attention to strength and speed, and even to quality than he seemed to give to the differentiation of the ray energies and how they are accessed and assimilated and directed, and what their effect may be. Okay, now let's continue with our method here of making things big or small accordingly. Okay, I think that's pretty good, close enough anyway. And I'm using this particular color. The strength of a particular force brings us back to the rule we are studying, for it involves in itself the factor of true persistence, and we have earlier seen that the emergence into functioning life and activity of any form is dependent upon the persistent attention of its creator. So there is that, as it is said in one of the mantrams, which I think I can find, I still persist. And how many times does it appear? Okay, maybe, here it is. Let the forces come together, let them mount to the high place, and from that lofty eminence, let the soul look out upon a world destroyed. Let the word go forth. I still persist. And obviously this is a first ray word of power or mantram, and we are dealing with strength and with a particularly first ray aspect. So I don't know if we can link all of these up via the rays. Type in this particular case, well, it seems to be based on differentiation. And quality on magnetic attraction strength, definitely first ray. Maybe speed, because there's a kind of glamour of doing things speedily and efficiently that belongs to the third ray, so maybe the third ray is there. As to type, you kind of wonder, are we dealing with the second ray? Because as the word quality is usually used, it means differentiation and into the various subcolors as white light is breaking up in the prism, and the qualities of that white light are represented by the second ray and by the colors. And then there is this question of quality as it's being used here. It has a lot of the second ray in it. And if I were to look at that in terms of the degree of refinement of the energies along that continuum we call a ray, then maybe the fourth ray, with its tendency to refine, might be found. So, do I overclassify here? Maybe type, second ray, quality, fourth ray, strength, first ray, speed, third ray, maybe. I'm not holding that out. Ray 2, 4, 1, 3. But of course, there's other ways to understand it. And as the Tibetan explained it, with type, there seems to be a lot of that will and the forcing forward of the first ray, and with quality, a lot of the magnetism of the second. But then again, coming to strength, it's got to be the first ray, and let's see what he's going to say about speed and efficiency. Okay, so strength, true persistence. Okay, and maybe what I should do is copy this when it deals with persistence. Okay, true persistence, and we'll do it this way. Okay, true persistence, and that is found in Esoteric Psychology Volume 2 and on some page or other. Let's see if in my view I have the hidden. No, I don't. So now I'll be able to get it. And it should come out red, page 84. Okay. Okay, so EP2. Whoop, that's not what I want. No. Sorry for these little housekeeping matters here. Okay, EP2, page 84. Okay, and we have seen earlier that the emergence into functioning, the emergence into functioning life and activity of any form is dependent upon persistent attention. When you take your eye away, things begin to fall apart, things begin to disintegrate. The eye is a directing and cohering mechanism. Energy can be used dynamically or steadily, and the effects of these two modes of the application of energy differ. But sometimes he tells us first ray is dynamic and crashing through, and second ray is, well, we have to use the word continuous, and no let up or leeway. Okay, let's see if I can get the right spelling there. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So many different perspectives, so many different angles on things. One is primarily used in the destructive work, and this is the dynamic method. And there are, for instance, certain dynamic words of power which, when employed by the creative destroyers, notice that, not just destroyers, bring about the destruction of forms. It's always, in their case, for the sake of bringing in the possibility of a cleared space so creation can occur. With these, however, aspirants have naught to do. It's too high, it's too dangerous, right? Their important work is to learn the meaning of persistence and of strength. That is a first ray, those are first ray qualities which we can all incorporate, whatever our principal ray may be. It is literally a time persistence, that's Vulcan, Virgo, and a strength, and strength is beyond all other things, the power to endure. It's so Vulcan, and to hold steady, hold out, to hold steady, to go forward undeterred. Oh, that's so interesting, and an important perspective, you know, to last, to endure. I've seen people on the first ray who can really do that, where others are giving up. The power of Vulcan planetarily. You know, seeing the one giving birth in Virgo through all of the vicissitudes and enduring, let's just say enduring pregnancy, which can be a very burdensome state towards the end. Study, therefore, more carefully the types dynamic, the quality magnetic, the strength persistent of the forces which constitute your equipment. Okay, so now he's wrapping it up and bringing some synthesis into this, which is certainly helpful. And I'm going to make this bigger because It's not a very linear study, is it? We might hope with a concrete mind to classify everything in a very neat manner, but it's not going to happen. So the dynamic type, the magnetic quality, and the persistent strength. This is what he's given us so far. Whatever else we may have thought. He has given us the dynamic type, the magnetic quality, and the persistent strength. Holding out, holding up, never giving up. Now, there's a lot of first ray in all this, but the second ray too. When you can wield either destructively or constructively, either selfishly or selflessly, or in line with the plan universal, because that's selfless, or the plan selfish and personal. Well, that gives the differentiation, doesn't it? Then you will work consciously and will knowingly tread the right or the left-hand path. Maybe the readers of this book have not all of them made a final decision. But it is a warning that the two types go along quite similarly at first, and have to do many of the similar types of training. But then a decision is made, it's going to be personal, or for form, it's going to be to inhabit the dense physical body of the solar logos, which is not principled in the cosmic sense, or it's going to be selfless, related to the principles of the planetary logos. It's going to work in the area of life, which is represented by the cosmic ethers, at least for a while. But it will not hang out, as it were, in the density of the dense physical body of the planetary logos as inherited from the previous solar system, or even in the dense physical body of the solar logos. Well, what can I say? This is intricate material, and it needs to be, in some way, by each student, put into outline form for easier assimilation and for the sake of memory when you wish to access it. So at least he has defined what is type, quality, and what is this? Strength. Yeah. Now we're going to get to speed. And it's been a slow way of doing it, I'm afraid. The factor of true persistence. Okay. All of these are necessary for the one, we've been told, who wants to approach cooperation with the spiritual hierarchy of our planet. And I think now we can look at this and maybe hope to complete it. Okay. All right. Now finally, speed. The speed of the force used is dependent upon these three previous factors. He tells us we have to work at organizing for speed. He tells us we're too much affected by what we might call tamas. Speed in this sense has no essential relation to time, though it is hard to find another word to use in the place of speed. Okay. Well, we have to, the idea here is that an initiate can accomplish more in a very, very short time than the average worker in a very long time. And speed can be very helpful in, making up for lost time or applying under the law of economy the energies which have to be applying with the least expenditure of energy. It relates to the world of effects as they emanate from the world of causes. It has perhaps essentially a relation to truth, for the truer an impulse is, the clearer the understanding of the subjective purpose, so will the right decision and the impact of force follow automatically. And there will be, less obstruction and less unnecessary expenditure of force. Perhaps speed would be more correctly translated by the word correct direction. For where there is correct direction, true orientation, exact understanding of purpose, and recognition of the type of force required, then there is instantaneous effect. Again, we're trying to be efficient here, and the efficiency connects with the third ray. You can tell that because the glamour of efficiency connects with the third ray. So let's just say here are we speaking of efficiency. When the soul has registered the desired quality and possesses the strength of the timeless one who can endure to the end, he that shall endure to the end shall be saved. When the soul has registered the desired quality and possesses the strength of the timeless one, let's say desired quality to attract the right circumstances, people, energies, environment. He said something else there, but that's the idea. The process of force expression and the relation between cause and effect is spontaneous and simultaneous. He talks about this in Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 2. There's a threefold sequence, and the second item occurs simultaneously with the third. The third is about manifestation. It'll come to me what it is. But right now I'm not going to go looking for it. The process of force expression and the relation between cause and effect is spontaneous and simultaneous and not sequential. This is okay. So this factor relates to Uranus, planet of simultaneity, and not Saturn so much, the planet of sequentiality. This can scarcely be understood by those who have not yet the consciousness of the eternal now. Well, we have to work on that. There is a power which maketh all things new. It lives and moves in those who know the self is one. And living in the eternal now. Let's take a look at that one, because I think it's a very beautiful idea. It lives and moves in all who know, and this is going to be it here, I think. Yeah. There is a peace which passeth understanding. It abides in the hearts of those who live in the eternal. That's the eternal now. And then there is a power which maketh all things new. It lives and moves in those who know the self as one. So I'm going to transfer this over here, as he's told us, unless we have something of the consciousness of the eternal now, we cannot really understand this. Okay. And what page are we on? Page 359 of Dyna 1. So, 359. Okay. Let's see, how does it go? Precipitation. Yeah, I'm trying to remember without going looking for it. The idea that he said the precipitation would be almost instantaneous and not sequential. He deals with that in Dyna 2. Okay. Okay, but this sequentiality. But this spontaneous and simultaneous effect is the clue to the entire magical work, and these four words, type, quality, strength, and speed, in them, the source of the work of a white magician is told. Okay. I'm very tempted to go looking, you know, but I have a deadline right now and maybe later I can mention it. But more I dare not give, and it is not permitted to me to speak more clearly. Notice how even a high master is careful and has to receive permission from his superiors to do certain things, to say certain things, to teach certain things. Few are yet fitted to be magicians, and few, perhaps fortunately, have as yet all the seven centers awakened so that they can work freely on the seven planes and with the seven types of the seven ray energies. It's almost like, boom, boom. So let's take that one. And we can ask, you know, does the highest head center then relate to the logoic plane? Okay. Well, it seems that the different centers can each be allocated in relation, maybe not in exact order, but in relation to the cosmic subplanes, you know, in our cosmic physical plane. So a word of warning, right? He has given a lot, but we have to divine, we have to discern the deeper nature of what has been given. I would point out that these four aspects of energy can be studied by the aspirant in his own nature. Okay? Type, quality, strength, speed of precipitation. On the physical plane, he is apparently the initiating cause, and as he works with these energies, they will call forth a response and reaction from those who feel the impact of them and who demonstrate their effect. It is true, therefore, is it not, that we work and live in a world of forces? Yes, it is true. We need no distant field or special domain in which to live and learn and work, for we dwell in a world of force and energy, you know, even right now. We are ourselves constituted of force or energy units, and we wield force knowingly or unknowingly throughout the 24 hours of the day. The field of our occult training is the field of the world and the world of our peculiar circumstances and environment. So this is another way of saying, you know, by the energies and forces which we express, we have made our circumstances and environment. Oh, this is a deep material, and obviously to learn a little bit about it is not enough. We actually have to study with care our surroundings. What led us to where we are? I'm sitting here in the Temple of Silence, something that Tuya and her co-workers conceived and put together years ago, and it continues to grow in power and in beauty. Why am I here? What happened? What expression of forces combined to bring me to this place? And, you can look at your circumstances, your partners, children, city, community, country. What brought you there? What led you to do what you are doing now? It's a deep search, deep search. Well, as usual, I feel I've given you an inadequate treatment of this material. So sorry in a way, but at least the words of the Tibetan have been read, and some ancillary thoughts have been offered, and maybe some light will appear, additional light, because we're all different, and different things are hints for people, different words, different statements, sentences. They're hints for different people. And if we recognize the hint, we can take it up and follow it until it leads to greater light. I'm not sure about the duration of this particular program, maybe 3.5 hours. I just don't know yet, due to the malfunction of my chronometer, which is due to pressing the wrong button at the wrong time. Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead next with number 9 and talk about the treading of the way. And here, what we have done is it's been complex, but I will, let's see, 569 to something. I won't worry about it. And we'll go down here and insert it here. And let's see what page we may be on. We appear to be on page 582, 581. So let's just say this is the end of part 8. And it's 569 to 581. And we're rule 14.2, probably in more or less 3 parts. And we'll be beginning number 9, which will be from 581. And I think it's going to get very practical now. 14.3. Here's where I should have put it. 581. Program 9. I didn't need to insert it there. Okay, friends. So this will be our next undertaking. And I hope it's been a long program, I know, but I'm quite desperate to finish this before heading to the United States in just a few days. And sort of into the area where the fire has been burning. I don't know when you'll see this or study it or what year it will be or who you will be or whatever, but in the year 2018, and I suppose in sequential years, there's going to be a lot of fires burning. It's all part of the statement that the attempt to destroy the Aryan race will be by fire, but at least the word attempt is there. Some of these fires are set accidentally, some of them maybe and horrifically are set purposefully, and they account for a loss of life. I think 44 people already have died and 100 are missing. Well, we're living through those kinds of times, but we are also preparing to become white magicians of the future to more efficiently and truly manifest a divine plan as conceived in the mind of the great initiates and finally of Sanat Kumara himself and finally of the planetary logos. At least purpose is found there, and the lesser aspects of himself have to work out the divine plan. So we will be coming back, and thank you for your studies, and apologies for errors I have made along the way. But I just give you what occurs to me and the links that I can make, and I try to make my way through what is obviously a highly organized presentation by the Tibetan, but which is so intricate in terms of the capacities of the human mind that it's easy to get a little bit lost, but probably if we study it a few times, everything will be clear. Right now, we've been dealing with the wielding of energy. And there's so many subcategories here, but the effective wielding of energy in the life of the aspirants such as we are, and the learning how to wield ever more powerful and significant energies in the right way. So maybe that's all I should say. Only a restudy of the material will bring it into greater clarity. So see you soon for, looks like number 9 in this a treatise on white magic video commentaries for the rules of magic for the physical plane.